Welcome to Live Daf, your online Daf Yomi Shir.
Shalom and welcome back to today's Daf Yomi Shabbos Naf Nun Beis, with 4 lines from the top. Says the Gemara, Tana de Bei Menashe. We learned the Brisa from Bei Menashe, the Besmedrash of Menashe, as follows. Now we're discussing the halacha that an animal may walk out into Shusarab on Shabbos wearing his gear, his leash, his muzzle, whatever it is that is suitable for this type of animal. Now what about an aiz, a goat, which is a bit more tricky on account of the fact that he's thin and wiggly and perhaps it can pose a concern? Let's take a look at the Gemara. Tana de Bei Menashe, aiz, a goat, shechakak lo ben karnea, where the owner bored a hole, drilled a hole through its horns. In that case, yoitza ba'afsar b'Shabbos. It may go out into Shusarab wearing the afsar, this rope which they used to tie generally to the animal's mouth. In this case, he pushes it through its horns and secures it there. And there's no concern about going out on Shabbos wearing this afsar, because otherwise there's a concern if he merely wraps it around his mouth or his neck that the aiz, the goat, will wiggle out, slip out of it, and the owner will be left holding the rope in his hand. He might come to carry it 4 amas in Shusarabim. So the only way it's possible is if he does a chakika ben karnea and secures the rope through its horns. Boy Rav Yosef, what about this idea? What if he puts it through its beard, the beard of the goat? He ties the beard in a circle shape and pushes the afsar, the rope, through the beard, through the circle of the beard. Mao, is that okay? Kivan di mantachla koivla. Perhaps there's a reason in favor, because kivan di mantachla, if the aiz tries to wiggle out, koivla, he's going to be in pain, and it's going to hurt him, because it's going to pull out the beard. So therefore, there's no concern that the aiz will get rid of his afsar. Lo yafsil and tuche, he will not come to wiggle out. Oidilma, perhaps zimnan durafi, perhaps the tying of the beard, this contraption won't really hold too long, because the hair of the beard don't really tie up too tightly. We know that hair is a smooth item, and perhaps the knot won't really last, and it will loosen up, Rafi, v'nafil, and the afsar will drop down, and the owner might come to carry a dal damas b'shusarabim. So is that an idea or not? Take it, we leave it unresolved. So pushing it through the horns is okay, but through the beard is a question. Continues the Gemara Tanan Hasam, we learned in the Mishnah. This is regarding a para, a cow. She cannot go out in Shusarabim wearing the ritzua, this ribbon, which is running between its horns. Now, there are 2 functions for this ribbon. It can be used for noi, as an ornament. Rashi explains, for instance, that they color it and they braid it between its horns. It's meant as an adornment, as an ornament. Or the purpose of this ritzua could be simply for shmira, to safeguard it, so the owner holds on to the ritzua and leads his animal, restrains his para in that manner. So what are we speaking about in this mission? This mission that doesn't allow a para to wear the ritzua and shusarabim. I have a machlekes. Omar, the Rav Yirmi Bab, Pligiba, there's a machlekes between Rav and Shmuel. Chad Omar, one says like this: Bein lenoi, whether this ribbon is coming for noi, for adornment. Bein lishamar, whether it's coming for safekeeping. Asur, it is asur. Why is that? So he holds that noi is not a reason to allow the para to wear the ritzua, because typically this is not something which is done to a para. It doesn't have a din of a tachshit. What about lishamar, if it's coming to safeguard the para, to control the para, so the owner holds on to it? Why is that a problem? Let's take a look at Rashi. Rashi right here off on the side, which is 16 lines from the top. Rashi says lishamar is asur. Why? The para, mintara, a para can be safeguarded and secured, but lo yachiza, without even holding on to it. It's a tamed animal. Elo malicha lefanav, he merely has the para walk in front of him, the owner walks behind him and leads it in that manner. So it doesn't need this type of shmira. Therefore, says Rashi, because savar. So this shita holds that nitirusi seirasa, adding an extra measure of security, which is unnecessary in this case, masui. This is considered to be a load, a masui. It's not considered to be an item of apparel, of tachshit. It is not batal to the animal, is rather considered to be a load. It's unnecessary. So once again, we have Rav and Shmuel having a machlekes regarding the pshat in the Mishnah that asers, that prohibits using the ritzua on the para. One says we're speaking about whether it's lenoi for adornment or even l'shamer for the purpose of safekeeping, it's aser. The other shita says, we're not sure which one is it, Rav or Shmuel. At this point, it's still anonymous, but the other one holds lenoi aser. I agree with you regarding noi adornment. It's aser because typically this is not done for a para, and it's not considered to be a conventional form of tachshit, of adornment. However, the shamer mutter, if it is constructed in a way that he can grab onto the strap, onto the ritzua, it's meant for that, it was placed there for that purpose, then certainly it's mutter because the owner needs it to control the animal. So even though it's not necessary for the parah, but he chose to do so. So as far as the owner is concerned, it's there for the sake of shmirah. He uses it to control his parah, and it's considered to be part of the parah. It's not a masui. Okay, so once again, the ritzua on the parah is not allowed if it's coming for noy, but if it's coming for shmir, we have a machlekes. But at this point, we don't know yet the author of these opinions. We don't know the Iman the Amar. We know one is Rav, one is Shmuel. The Gemara is going to try to decipher this riddle. Amar Rav Yosef, Tistayim. You can conclude, you can clarify that it's actually the Shmuel who the Amar. Shmuel is the one who holds L'noy asur l'shama murta. That if it's merely coming for adornment, for noy, for beauty, then it's asur. But if it's coming l'shamer, if the owner is intending on using it for shmira, then it's mutar, although it's unnecessary to shmira yisera, it's still considered to be appropriate and is not a masu. How do we know Shmuel holds that l'shamer is mutar? How do we know that he holds shmira yisera? Or as the Gemara said, netirusa yiserasa, this excessive restraint, this added measure of security is not considered to be a load. How do we know that? Very simple. The Amar, Rav Huna bar Chiya, Amar Shmuel. Halacha kechananya. So we see Shmuel rules paschas like Chananya, which who presented a shita yesterday in Daf Alpha and Beis, that nitirusa yisera, adding an unnecessary measure of security. For instance, placing a collar on the cat, although not required, nevertheless it's considered to be a proper tachshit. We don't look at it as a load, although it's a shmir yisera. So apparently Shmuel holds this shita. He subscribes to this opinion that nitirusa yiserasa, added measure of security, is not a problem. So here too, regarding the ritzua of the para, although it is a shmir yisera, it's okay. So we appear to have a conclusion. Shmuel is the shita that holds l'noy asur l'shamar mutar. One second. Amalei Abaye, Adrab, just the opposite. To stayim, you can conclude the Shmuel the Amar, Bein l'noy, Bein l'shama asur. Actually, I have a raya that Shmuel holds the other opinion, that whether the ritzua is coming for beauty or for shmira, it's still asur because it's not considered to be a tachshit, it's considered to be a masui. Even the shmira, it's a shmira yisera and unnecessary. How do I know that Shmuel holds that a shmira yisera is a masui? The Amar Rav Yehuda Shmuel. Rav Yehuda quoted Shmuel as follows. We had this in Daf Aleph. Machlifin lefnei Rebbe, the students, the Talmidim, they presented a question, a shayla lefnei Rebbe, they switched things around, meaning shel zu b'zu ma'u, that the various animals listed in our Mishnah and the different types of apparatuses are appropriate for each animal. What about if they switch things around? For instance, the gamo, which is a tamed animal, was outfitted with a nose ring, which is unnecessary for him. It's an excessive shmira. Or, as the Gemara proposed yesterday in the reverse as well, a feisty animal was outfitted with a measly, weak, insecure type of restrainer. So what if we switch things around? Is that okay? Is that also okay? Is that considered to be permitted on Shabbos? So the Gemara actually concluded yesterday that the Ikar Shaila was to upgrade, meaning if the Gama who doesn't need a nose ring was given a nose ring, is that okay? Amr Lafanav Rav Shmuel Rav Yossi. So Rav Shmuel, the son of Rav Yossi, announced in front of Rebbe, said as follows: Kach Amar Abba, actually my father, who was Rav Yossi, he listed 4 behemoths, Dalad behemoths, Yoitzis ba'afsar. He stated that there are 4 behemoths to which an afsar, this rope tied around the mouth, goes around the neck as well. So this afsar is an appropriate form of shmira for the following 4 behemoths: hasus, a horse, a parrot, a mule, a gamal, camel, a chamar, and a donkey. So the fact that he listed these 4 animals and said that these 4 animals are meant to wear an afsar, apparently he's coming to exclude something, he's coming to teach us something. Lav limuti, isn't he coming to exclude? An upgrade, for instance, gamal b'chatam. If one upgrades and adds an unnecessary shmira, for instance, he puts a nose ring on a ordinary, typical gamal who doesn't require it, it's considered to be a masui and inappropriate for Shabbos. So the fact that this story was related by Rav Yehuda Omar Shmuel, in the name of Shmuel, presumably he agrees with this, and he holds that upgrading is not permitted. A shmira mu'ula, a shmira yisera, a netirusi yisera is considered to be a load. So Abaye says, I have a riot that Shmuel actually holds it's a load. So now we have a contradiction, we have a stira. Over here we have an indication that Shmuel holds that upgrading unnecessarily is a load. Previously we quoted Shmuel, who rules according to Chananya, who clearly tells us that upgrading is okay. So how do we reconcile this stira? Says the Gemara, Sami, you must delete, erase, ha mekameha. You must erase this last raya, this last quote in the name of Shmuel, where it seems it's indicative of Shmuel's opinion that upgrading is not appropriate. We'll delete that in the face of the first quote of the Shmuel, who rules according to Chananya, and indicates that a shmiri yisera, an upgrade, is okay. So we'll delete this one in the face of that one, and we'll conclude that Shmuel holds upgrading is fine. Says in 1 second, why do you pick and choose this one over that one? Umay chazis, the mesamis ha. Why do you prefer? What is your raya to delete this one, mikameha, in the face of the other one? Why don't you do it in the reverse? Sameha, delete and erase the first Shmuel, the Shmuel that seemed to have ruled according to Chananya that upgrade is okay. Erase that Shmuel, mikameha, in the face of this Shmuel, and deem this quote of Shmuel to be more reliable, and rely on this one. And Shmuel indeed will hold that upgrading is asur. Says, I'll tell you why. The Ashichan Shmuel, we found actually clearly that Shmuel holds, Shmuel the Amar Linoy Asur, L'Shamar Mutter, that if the ribbon is there for beauty, it's asur. However, if it's there to provide shmir, even though it's a shmir yisera, he's adding an unnecessary measure of security, of safeguarding, he's upgrading it, it is mutter. We find clearly that Shmuel holds this shita, and therefore we prefer to deem the first Shmuel, the Shmuel that passes like Chananya, that an upgrade is okay. We prefer that quote of Shmuel over the other quote of Shmuel, who seems to indicate otherwise. So where is this clarity? The Itma, as we learned, Rav Chia bar Ashi, Omar Rav. So he quoted Rav as saying, Bein L'noi, Bein L'shamar Asur, whether it's for beauty or for security, it's asur. So finally we have a name attached to the Shita. Rav Chia bar Ashi quotes Rav to be the Shita who holds that in all cases it's asur, whether it's for adornment or for Shmira, because it's an upgrading, it's an unnecessary addition of Shmira and considered to be a Masui. Rav Chia bar Abin Omar Shmuel, he's directly quoting Shmuel, who says L'noi asur. You're right, if it's merely coming L'noi to beautify, then typically a ritzua is not placed on the parah for this purpose. It's not considered to be a tachshit. However, L'shamer, if it's placed there for Shmira, for the owner to grab onto it to lead his animal mutter, it is allowed, although, as we said earlier, it's not really necessary for the parah, and it's considered to be a shmiri yisera and a tirusa yiserasa, an unnecessary upgrade. Nevertheless, we see clearly that Shmuel subscribes to the opinion that tirusa yisera is okay. So in conclusion, regarding a ritzua on a parah, Rav holds in all cases it's asur. Shmuel holds if it's l'noi it's asur, but l'shamer it's mutter, because he holds that an upgrade is mutter. Says more Meisvei, we have a kasha from a brisa on Rav, who holds that shmiri yisera is considered to be a masu elot regarding Shabbos. Let's take a look at this Mishnah. It's actually a Mishnah. It says the Mishnah in Parah Kshara Ba'aleh B'Meisera. We're speaking about the Parah Aduma, who's not allowed to have a load put on him that makes him unfit, makes him puzzle. So what if the owner tied the Meisera, the reins around the leash around the Parah Aduma? Is that considered to be a load? Kshara, it's fine. It doesn't become puzzle. It's not considered to be a load. Now, as we said before, a parah doesn't need this type of security. He walks. He's a compliant animal, he doesn't need any leashes, any reins. So this is a Shmira Yisera, an unnecessary upgrade. If Rav maintains that a Shmira Yisera is considered to be a load with regard to Shabbos, so too with regard to Paraduma. Why don't we consider it to be a Masui? It's as though the Parah is carrying a load. It's not considered to be an item of apparel, an adornment, something which is batal to the Parah. He's carrying a load, an unnecessary object. The Torah says clearly that a paraduma is only kosher if a yoke was not placed on it. So if one places a load on a parah, he nullifies, he makes it puzzle. Omar Abaye, says Abaye like this, you're right. Typically, this is considered to be a masoi and would indeed disqualify the paraduma, just as we consider it to be a masoi on Shabbos. This case of the Mishnah speaking about a unique circumstance. Amar Abaye b'malicha, merely here speaking about one who was traveling with his parah, taken from city to city. In that case, there's a concern that the parah will veer off to the pasture. He's tempted to go graze on the side of the road, so the owner needs to take an extra measure of security to restrain his parah, and therefore he has the moisera there. So in this circumstance, it's not considered to be a load. It is considered to be something necessary for its shmira. Rav Amar Shani Parah, the Demeyakar and a paraduma is very different than an ordinary parah, than a typical cow, because it's very expensive. And generally speaking, the owner adds a added measure of security to the parah on account of its high value. He wants to make sure it doesn't disappear, to make sure that, somebody doesn't put a load on it, etc. So the point here is that this situation requires this type of shmira. Is not considered to be a shmira yisera. Ravina, we're speaking about a parah who exhibits a rebellious character, rebellious attitude, and therefore it requires this Terusa Yisera, this added measure of restraint and security, and in this case, it's not considered to be a Masi. So in summary, the Mishnah taught us that a Ritzua placed between the horns of a parah is not something which the parah can carry out into the Rishus Rabbim. We have Machlekes. Rav holds that whether it's placed for Noi or for Shmir Yisera is considered to be a Masi. Shmuel says, I agree about Noi, but if it's there for Shmira, it's okay, although it's providing that extra measure of unnecessary Shmira, it's not considered to be a Masi. Now, we had a little background till we got to this conclusion. We had apparently three quotes from Shmuel, which seemed to be contradictory. We began with the quote that Shmuel paskins, he rules like Chananya, that an added measure of Shmir Yisera is okay. Then we had another quote of Shmuel, which seemed to indicate that we are memayit an upgrade, for instance, a gomer who doesn't need a nose ring. It is excluded, it can't be used on Shabbos. A gomer cannot walk out wearing a nose ring. Here it appears that Shmuel holds the Shmir Yisera is not appropriate. And we concluded that since we have a direct quote from Shmuel, Rav Chia Bar Abin tells us in the name of Shmuel that Shmir Yisera is appropriate, is okay, is acceptable, so we conclude accordingly, and we attribute the shita that holds Shmir Yisera is okay to Shmuel. Continues the Gemara. Hasus b'sher, the Mishnah told us. Perhaps let's take a look back at the Mishnah, beginning of the parak. In the middle of the Mishnah, Hasus b'sher, the horse wears his share. Now the share is it's comprised of three parts. It has the collar, the necklace around the chain around the neck of the animal. That's one part. Then it has a leash, some sort of rope attached with a ring to this collar. So it's a three-part system. The sus goes out wearing the share. It's considered to be appropriate for the sus. And the Mishnah continues of chol bali hasher, all types of creatures that typically wear the share. For instance, Rashi says a hunting dog, yoitzim b'sher, they can go out wearing the share. V'nim shachim b'sher, and they're pulled through the share. Now, what does it mean, yoitzim b'sher? They go out wearing the share. V'nim shachim b'sher, and they're pulled with the share. What does this mean? It seems to be redundant, a double lashon. So we have machlokes. Back to our Gemara, sus b'sher. Ma yoitzin u'ma nimshachin. What does the Mishnah mean? They go out and they're pulled. Omar Rav Huna, it's referring to two separate types of things. Oy yoitzin nechrach kruchin, oy nimshachin. So Rav Huna holds that even if this leash is wrapped around the neck and it's there for the sake of noy, of adornment, is considered to be part of the behema. It's considered to be bottle of the behema. It's a tachshit of the behema. It's like a piece of jewelry. It adorns him. It's not considered to be a maseh. Therefore, Rav Huna interprets the Mishnah like this. He says, yoitzin means that it may go out wearing the leash even if it's kruchen, if it's wrapped around his neck and is not serving any purpose other than noy, than adornment. Oy, or nimshachen. Or it can go out in a manner where the leash is dangling, is loose, is not wrapped around his neck, where the owner pulls and leads the animal, holding on to the leash. So in either case, if it's l'noy or l'shmira, it's okay. Ushmol amar, no. It is only mutter if it is there for the sake of shmira. Apparently, Shmuel holds that this is not typically done to this animal. This shear is not applied for noy, for adornment. Therefore, if it's only there for noy, if it's wrapped around his neck and doesn't serve as a shmira, doesn't serve the owner's purpose of restraining and controlling his animal with it, it's considered to be a maseh. So therefore, Shmuel interprets the Mishnah as follows: Shmuel amar yoitzin imshachim, ve'ein yoitzin kruchen. Now, when the Mishnah said yoitzin b'sher and imshachim b'sher, the Mishnah is explaining itself. In what manner can he go out wearing the sher? Yoitzin b'sher only if it's nimshachim b'sher, if it's there in a manner where the owner pulls the animal through the sher, through holding on to the leash. But if it's kruchen, if it's wrapped around its neck and it's only serving the purpose of noy adornment, that is considered to be a masa. But masnisatana, and the brayso we learned, is support to Shmuel. Yoitzin kruchen lemashech. The animal can go out wearing the sher and the leash wrapped around his neck, limashech, in a manner which allows the owner to grab onto it for security to lead his animal. As Rashi explains, this is Rashi right off to the side here. Kruchen limashech explains Rashi as follows: although it's wrapped, nevertheless it is used for shmira. How's that? Kruchen berevach. It's wrapped in a loose manner. Sheyochel lahachnis yodai ben hakrach letzaver, where the owner has the option, has the ability to place his hand between the wrapping and the neck, meaning to grab onto this wrapped cord. So in that manner, it's serving the purpose of shmir and it's mutter. Or, he says Rashi, alternatively, yoniach ma'at v'nachevel, you should leave some of the rope dangling. So if he sees the animal is about to run away, he can quickly grab the dangling part and secure the animal in that manner. So when the brayso tells us yoitzin kruchen limashach, the brayso means it's wrapped but in a way that it's still serving the purpose of shmira, and this is the right to Shmuel, then only if it's for the purpose of shmira, it is mutter. Continues the Gemara. Amar Rav Yos, chazina lehu, I noticed iglei devei Rav Huna, the calves of the home of Rav Huna, yoitzin be'afsarein, they would go out with this afsar, this halter that we mentioned earlier, a rope that's connected, wrapped, tied to his mouth, it goes around the neck. So this afsar was actually kruchen b'Shabbos. It was wrapped completely around the neck of the agolim, of the calves. Apparently it was only serving the purpose of noy, of adornment. It was mutter. So Rav Huna actually conducted himself in his home in accordance with his shita, mentioned earlier, that even wrapping this rein, this leash, in a manner where it's only serving the purpose of noy, of adornment, is mutter on Shabbos. So not only did he present the shita, but he actually acted accordingly. Ki asr Rav Dimi. Rav Dimi came, he related the following thing. Amar Rav Chanina, he said, Rav Chanina said, Muloi shel bes Rebbe, the mules in the home of Rebbe, yoitzois ba'afsarein b'Shabbos. They would go out to Sharam wearing their afsar, this halter, this rope, on Shabbos. Says, what does he mean to say? Iboilu. They asked the question. Kruchen? Does he mean that the afsar was wrapped around its neck and served the purpose of noy? And Rebbe holds that noy is mutter. Oinim shachem was speaking about leading the animal, leading the calf with his afsar. It wasn't wrapped around his neck. It was there for the purpose of shmira. However, kricha l'noy is asr. We're not sure. Says Martoshma, come and listen to the right. Ki asr of Shmuel bar Yehuda. So he said, he added some more detail. He said, in the name of Chanina, Amar Chanina, Muloi shel beis Rebbe, the mules of Rebbe's home, yoitzos, they would go out to Sharam on Shabbos, ba'afsarein kruchen b'Shabbos. So their afsar was actually wrapped around the neck. Apparently he holds that noy is mutter. Okay, so you have a raya that Rebbe indeed allows the afsar to serve a noi purpose, an adornment purpose, a tachshit purpose, and it's not considered to be a masui. Continues the Gemara. So we have two quotes. We have Rav Dimi, who related that the mulois, the mules of Beis Rebbe, would wear their afsar. We have Rav Shmuel bar Yehuda, who added another detail, elaborated, said, well, even wrapped is mutter. So Amru Rabbanan, the Rabbanan challenged. They said in front of Rav Asi as follows: Amru Rabbanan kamed Rav Asi. Had Rav Shmuel bar Yehuda lo tzricha. Why do we need two quotes? We need two testimonies. First from Rav Dimi, then we have Rav Shmuel bar Yehuda. They seem to be duplicating each other. Why? Midar Rav Dimi nafka. We know this halacha that even kricha, even if they're wrapped around the neck for noi, that it's mutter. We know that from Rav Dimi, even though Rav Dimi didn't express that, didn't stipulate that. Nevertheless, it's pretty obvious and evident that that's what he meant. Why? Because if you propose that Rav Dimi was merely telling us that the afsar, which is there from a shicha, to hold on to lead the animal with it for shmirah's sake, only in that manner did Rebbe allow, but not for noi. If that's what he's trying to say, and that's why we needed this second testimony of Rabbi Shmuel bar Yehuda, who elaborated and added further that even for noi is mutter. If that's the case, is that what Rav Dimi was trying to tell us? The fact that Rebbe allows the animal to go out wearing his afsar when it is serving the point and the purpose of restraining of shmirah, we know that already. We don't need Rav Dimi to tell us that. We know that from elsewhere, from Rav Yehuda Amar Shmuel. How do we know that? The Amar Rav Yehuda Amar Shmuel, this is the Gemara we learned before. The Rav Yehuda Amar Shmuel tells us, Rebbe, they would ask the Shaila in front of Rebbe, what if things were switched around? If the various gear was switched around, for instance, the gamal was outfitted with a nose ring, etc., is that considered to be appropriate for Shabbos? And what was the conclusion? Amar lefanav Rav Shmuel Rav Yossi. So Rav Shmuel Rav Yossi went ahead and he announced in front of Rebbe, Kach Amar Abba, this is what my father said, Arba behemois yotzes ba'afsar, the following four behemois wear an afsar on Shabbos, hasus va'pered, a horse and a mule, va'gamal v'chamor, a camel and a chamor. So presumably Rebbe agrees to this, that a parrot, a mule, can be outfitted with an afsar on Shabbos. So we know that from there already. Why do we need Rav Dimi's testimony that the agolim of Beis Rebbe would go out wearing the afsar? The muloi Shabbos Rebbe, the mules of Rebbe's home would go out wearing an afsar. It's pretty obvious that Rebbe subscribed to that view. We know that already. So evidently, what is Rav Dimi coming to tell us with his testimony? He's coming to add a fact. He's coming to say, even if it's there in a manner of noi, if the afsar is merely wrapped around its neck and serving a purpose of noi, of adornment, that too is mutter. Apparently he's coming to add to what we've already known earlier. So, at the end of the day, why do we need the additional testimony, the additional statement from Rav Yehuda bar Shmuel bar Yehuda, who comes to tell us that even l'noi is mutter? We know that from Rav Dimi. Says the Gemara, Omar Lu Rav Asi. So Rav Asi responded to the Rabban who asked the question. What's the point and purpose of Rav Dimi's of Rav Shmuel bar Yehuda's testimony? So he said very simple. Itzrich, we indeed need it. Why? The Imra Rav Yehuda nafka, because if only for the fact that we know the story of the Rav Yehuda bar Shmuel with the whole Shaila of Machlifin and the response of Rav Yossi, if only for that, if from there alone, that wouldn't be sufficient. Why? Hava mina, I would think, Omar lefanav lo kiblu minei. True indeed, Rabbi Shmuel Rav Yossi presented the shita to Rebbe. He said, my father actually told us that a mule can go out wearing an afsar. So he presented it to Rebbe. But how do we know that Rebbe accepted that and agreed to that? Kamash Malan de Rav Dimi. Therefore, Rav Dimi needs to come and tell us, yes, I know for sure, for certainty, that Rebbe actually subscribes to this view. He allowed in practice. I know that in his own household, his mules will go out wearing the afsar. So that's the point, the benefit of having Rav Dimi tell us that story. V'ida Rav Dimi. But if only for that, if only we would have that statement of Rav Dimi, that also wouldn't be sufficient. I would think. Okay, so the way they afsar, but in what manner? Perhaps it's only because it's coming to serve as a shmirah. It's meant to be used to pull the animal with it. But if it's wrapped around the neck and it's only serving the purpose of noi, Perhaps that's not okay. Kamash malon. That's why we need. The Rav Shmuel Bar Yehuda. Shmuel Bar Yehuda comes and teaches us and informs us. Not only does Rebbe allow the mule to be outfitted with the afsar on Shabbos, not only does he allow it to be used for Meshicha, to lead him and to keep him secure, but even for Noi, it's also okay. So in summary, we learned two different halachas. First, regarding this share, this three-part apparatus, the collar with the ring, with the leash attached to it. So we have a machlekes between Rav Huna and Shmuel. Rav Huna says, if it is coming for the sake of Noi or for the sake of Shmira, in both cases, it's okay, it's not considered to be a Masi. Shmuel disagrees, he says, only if it's coming for Shmira it's okay, but coming for Adorn and for Noi is considered to be a Masi. What about the Afsar? The Gemara concluded that Rebbe holds that a mule can be outfitted with an Afsar, and the Afsar is not only coming to serve for Shmira, to be led with the Afsar, but even if the Afsar is wrapped around its neck and serving the purpose of Noi, of adornment, it too is okay on Shabbos. Continues the Gemara. Back to the share, this collar. The Mishnah told us, Umazan alein v'toivlan b'mkoimim. If they become tamei, he can go ahead and sprinkle the Efer Paradum on it or immerse it in the mikveh while it's still on the animal. Says the Gemara, 1 second here. How did this necklace become tamei in the first place? It's serving an animal. Something which is mishamish an animal is not makabel tumah. Limeimra, how do you propose? The bnei kibula tumaninu. You suggest, Limeimra, do you suggest the bnei kibula tumaninu, that these items which are serving the animal are susceptible to tumah? V'atanan, but haven't we learned in the Mishnah? Tabaz adam tmeya, a personal ring, a ring meant for an adam, is makabel tumah, although it's not a beged. Rashi says we learn it from a special pasuk that even a tachshit, a piece of jewelry serving an adam, is makabel tumah. This is Rashi, 8 lines from the bottom. Tmeya, says Rashi, the tachshit too, because it's an adornment, it's a tachshit. Ume midyan yalfinon, we learn from the story of Midyan in Bamidbar that the Torah lists all types of tachshitin, of pieces of jewelry, the manab and tachshitin, and it's odav, it's samid, va'akulu, on all those items when they become tamid. The pasuk says, "Akulu koitis chatov atam eshvichem." You must be matar, you must purify them. Apparently, even a piece of jewelry, an article of jewelry, is makabel tumah, provided that it's serving an adam. However, v'tabas, back to the Gemara, v'tabas be'ema v'kelim, but a tabas, which is serving a behema or a kli, v'shar kal tabois, other types of rings. Kigoyin, says Rashi on the last line, Kigoyin hasuyis ledeles. It is a ring affixed to a door, perhaps to sound for sounding when somebody comes to the door. This is the way he sounds like a bell. So the point is that the tabaz is not serving an adam, says the Mishnah Torahs. They're tar, because unless it's serving an adam, it's not makabel tumah. So how did this share, this collar, serving an animal, become tummy in the first place? Says Gemara two terutzim. Number one, Amar Yitzchak. Some take out the word nafcha. Bevoyin minay adam l'noy behema. You're right. If it's merely a tachshat of behema, it's not makabel tumah. We're speaking about this necklace, which was initially servicing an adam. It was used for adornment for a person, and then was transferred and designated for the given over to the behema. So it became tumah while it was serving the adam. Even though right now it's wrapped around the behema's neck, it still retains its tumah, its status, and it's still tumah. So you're right. In the present state, while it's serving the behema, it cannot have contracted tumah because it's a tashmish of a behema. It's a tashmish of a behema. We're speaking about that it was originally serving an adam, and that's when it became tumah, and it's still tumah as a result. Rav Yosef Amar, but a little different. He says as follows: You're assuming that this necklace, this collar, is considered to be a shimush behema, a tachshat behema. No, says Rav Yosef. It's actually considered to be a utensil, a personal utensil, a utensil, a kli intended for an adam, a tachshat for an adam. Why? Says Rav Yosef, who's deriving benefit from this collar? Who's using it? The behema needs it, or the person needs it? It's providing a shimush for the person. Says Rashi, it's considered to be a kli tashmish da adam. It's serving the person. Therefore, it is makabatum. Let's see inside. Rav Yosef Amar, since the owner uses it to lead the behemoth, to control the behemoth, it's considered to be a kli tashmish da adam and can be makabatum. Milay Tanya, haven't we learned in a brayse a similar concept? Makal shabem shamateches. The staff, a metal staff, used to hit the behemoth, to lead the behemoth, to drive the animal. Mikabel tuma. It is makabel tuma. Why? It's a kli behemoth. The answer is matam hoyel v'odam roida behem, because the person, the owner, uses it to drive his cattle, to drive his behemoths. Therefore, it's considered to be a tashmish da adam and makabel tuma. It's serving a human, serving a person, serving an adam. Achanami here too by the share, by this collar. Hoyel v'adam moishav, since the owner uses it to control the animal, it's considered to be a kli shimush l'adam, designated to be used by the adam and is makabel tumah. So the question was, how is it makabel tumah? We have two answers. Either it became tameh when it was still serving an adam, prior to being transferred to the behemoth. Number two, even at the present time, it's considered to be a kli which is serving the adam and can be makabel tumah. Continues the Gemara b'toizel mim kaiman. So you can immerse the share, this collar, this necklace on its place while the behemoth is wearing it. Says the Gemara, how can you do that? There's a chatzitzer, since the leash which is attached to the necklace with a ring is firmly connected, it's tightly fitted, it doesn't allow the water to get there between the rings, and considered to be a chatzitza. Taisus learns that the Gemara is assuming that the necklace, this collar is tightly fitting, is wrapped tightly around the behemoth, and creates a chatzitza. So how can it be a toivel, this share, while it's on the behemoth? Omar Rav Ami b'sherischam was speaking about that he hammered, he flattened it out, meaning he widened the ring there, and now the rings are loosely fitted, and there's no problem chatzitza. Okay, says the Gemara. Now let's analyze Rami. Rami says he flattened out the rings, he hammered it. Now we need to know one thing: that a ring which is flattened out is not really doesn't look so pretty and is not suitable to be used for an adam any longer. Certainly for a behemoth's use, it's fine. Perhaps it's even better now. So the collar is looser. He increased its size. It can be used for a wider neck. So let's analyze Rav Ami's teretz. He widened it. He flattened it. He hammered it. Now, in view of the previous Gemara, we had a kasha. How is this thing makabel tumah? We had two terutzim. Either it was initially used for a person, and that's how it became tameh, or even at the present moment, it's serving the adam. Says the more lamer, perhaps. Rav Ami, Rav Yosef really. Rav Ami is shita. Rav Ami tells us that he hammered out this share, this chain, which allows it to be toivel in the mikveh when it becomes tameh. So apparently Rav Ami holds that even a chain which was hammered out still retains its tumah, still considered to be tameh, and requires tevilah. Who is he following? Who is his shita compatible with? It seems like Rav Ami is following Rav Yosef's shita, who tells us that the reason why the share is tameh is because in the present moment it's considered to be a kli tashish to adam and can become a tumah presently, and therefore, even if it's speaking about rischan, that he flattened out, then he hammered out those rings, since it's suitable to be used for a behemoth, so it's suitable to be used in its current state for the behemoth, it is makabel tumah. However, if Rav Ami is following the interpretation of Yitzchak, the Ikar of Yitzchak Nafcha, the Omar, who told us that why is this chain tameh in the first place? Because it's speaking about beboin minay adam, because initially it was used for the adam, and then was transferred to the behemoth. So when did it become tameh? Not now. Now when it was serving the behemoth. It must be that the tumah arrived earlier when it was still serving the adam. Okay, so if the reason why it's tameh is based on the fact that it's a tashmish to adam, what happens when he hammers it out and renders it unfit for an adam? Certainly the tumah should disappear, because he is nullifying this kli. He's making it unfit to be used for the adam. And the reason for the tumah to begin with was only because it was serving an adam. Let's see inside. The Ikar Yitzchak Nafcha, because if he's following the sheet of Rabbi Yitzchak, who tells us why is this chain tummy? The Amar B'vayim Adam, because it became tummy when it was serving the Adam. So this chain was coming from serving an Adam and a Behema, and then transferred to a Behema. Now, Kiva the Rischa, now that he hammered it out, Avad Bu Maisa, he did an action, he did a Maisa, which changed the form of this utensil. Uparchla Tuma Minayu. And as a result, the Tuma should disappear, should fly away. Why? Because he's nullifying, he's negating its status. He's making it, he's being mevatel the kli. It can't be used for an adam any longer. And that is the reason for its tumah. Now, what do we know this concept from? That doing a maisa to change the form of the kli is mevatel the kli. That's not as we learned. Kol ha'kelim yordin lidei tumasan b'machshav. Mishnah teaches us that all types of utensils, where the owner had decided, okay, that's it, I'm finished, I completed it, I don't plan on adding any more work to it, it's considered to be, as a result of this machshava, it's considered to be nigmar malachta, its work is completed, and it descends into tumah, meaning it becomes capable, susceptible of being mekabel tumah. Kol HaKelim, says the Mishnah again, yordin lidei tumason, it becomes susceptible to tumah machshava, merely as a result of the machshava, the intention of the owner, who has no plans to do any further work on this item. But once it becomes susceptible to tumah, once it arrives at that state, he can't undo it so easily. Vein oilin mitumasan, it can't emerge from that state. Ela b'shini maisa, unless he does a shinu maisa, unless he indicates through an action that, you know what, I plan on doing some more work to this item, and thereby he changes its status. It's considered to be back. He reverts it to a kli, an unfinished vessel, and it cannot be mekabel tumah any longer. For instance, Rashi says a piece of leather hide that can go either way. He can, it's suitable to use as a rug, and in that case, it doesn't require much more work. He simply takes the leather, the hide, places it on the floor, and he uses it. It doesn't require any work. Or you can take it to a different direction. You can use it for straps, or make from it some type of leather product. In that case, certainly the work was not completed or finished. So if his machshava is, well, I'm using it as a rug, at this point, it is susceptible to mekabel tumah. But if he should change his mind, decide, you know what, I want to use it for ritzuyos, to make from it straps, it does not change the status. It doesn't revert to its old status unless he does a ma'aseh. He begins cutting it, and by doing so, he demonstrates his intention to continue to resume work on this item, and it's considered to be from now on a kli shelo yirmir malachta, and it cannot be mekabel tumah. Now, the same concept applies to something which is already tummy. If a kli is already tummy, it cannot lose its tumah status unless he does a shinu ma'aseh. He changes the appearance of the item. He does an action which changes its surah, the form of the item, and by doing so, he's mevatel the kli. He nullifies its use. He renders it unfit for use, and is considered to be batel materis kli, and becomes tar. Says more, getting back to our case, this chain, which became tummy due to the fact that it was serving an adam, now when he went ahead and flattened it, he hammered it, he rendered it unfit for an adam. This shini mais is mevatel the kli. It should become tar. So why does it need a mikveh to begin with? Why does the Mishnah discuss being toivel, this share, when it's still in its place on the animal? It doesn't need a mikveh. It's not tummy any longer. So apparently, says the Gemara, Rav Ami, who told us that he flattened out this, that he hammered out this chain, this shita is compatible with Rav Yosef's shita, who tells us the reason for the tumah, the source reason of the tumah on this chain is because right now, currently, it's considered to be a tashmish to adam, because the owner uses it to control the animal, and therefore, hammering the chain does not nullify its status because he's not ruining it. It's still perfectly usable and suitable for a behemoth. Okay, so once again, apparently Rav Ami is following Shitas Rav Yosef, and he cannot subscribe to the view, to the interpretation of Rav Yitzchak, that it originated as a tashmish adam and became tummy then, because otherwise it would become tar as a result of the hammering. Says we're not so fast. Savar like Rav Yehuda. Perhaps Rav Ami subscribes to Shitas Rav Yehuda, who holds the Amar Maisa l'sakin. If one does a Maisa, even if he changes the form of the kli, Lav Maisa, we don't view it as a Maisa, meaning it doesn't ruin the Teres Kli. It is not Mevatel. He's not nullifying the Kli by simply doing a Maisa, which is a constructive act. In this case, it's a constructive act, because flattening out the rings, loosening the chain on the animal actually is beneficial. He loosens it, makes it more comfortable. Perhaps now it can be used for a larger animal. So, although he's doing a Shini Maisa here, and although the reason for this tumah was because it was serving the Adam, and this Shini Maisa renders it unfair for an Adam. However, in its current state, when it's serving the Behema, this Maisa is actually beneficial to it. It's a constructive Shini Maisa. Rida holds that does not negate its Teres Kli, it's not bottom of Teres Kli, and still retains its tumah status. So, certainly Rav Ami can hold like Rav Yitzchak as well. The reason why it's tummy is because it became tummy when it was serving the Adam. Now, although he hammered it out, it doesn't change the status of the Kli, because in its current state, in its current function, its current use, in the context of serving the Behema, this mice is actually beneficial to it. And according to Yehuda, in this case, it retains its status as Kli, and certainly it's still tummy, requires tefillah in the mikveh. So in summary, the Mishnah tells us that this chain, this share, is tamei and needs to be immersed in the mikveh. The tefillah can take place even when it's sitting on the animal. The Gemara asked, how is it mekabel tumah in the first place, since it is meshamish a behema? Teretz number one was that it was mekabel tumah when it served the Adam, before transferring to the behema. Second teretz was that even in its current state, it's considered to be a mishamish la Adam, because the owner is leading the animal with this chain, and therefore can become tamei even right now. Now, what about chatzitza? Why isn't it considered to be a problem, chatzitza? We have two terutzim. Firstly, was Rav Ami's teretz that is speaking about that he hammered it out and loosened the rings. The second teretz says the Gemara now, v'ma'asnisa tani. In the Brayso we learned, what is the pshat? How can we take this to the mikveh? What about the problem chatzitza? B'mechalal, speaking about initially the holes of the collar were fashioned in a way that they were large, they were big, they were broad, and there's plenty of place for the water to go through. It all fits very loosely together and doesn't pose a problem chatzitza. Continues the Gemara, Shal Talmud Echad. Migala Elyon, it was a student from the upper Galil who asked a Shaila, Esr Belezer. Shamati, I heard, Shecholkin ben Tabas Tabas. I heard that there's some sort of halachic distinction between one sort of ring and another sort of ring. And I'm not sure exactly in what context we're speaking about. Amalei Shavlezer responded, Shemalei Shamata, perhaps what you heard was only with regard to Shabbos, Elini Shabbos. As the Mishnah tells us later on, the Perek, actually the next Perek, Naf Samach, that can one go out to Rishus Rabbim wearing a tabas ring? It depends. If it's a tabas chosam that contains a seal, that's considered to be a load. But if it's a tabas that does not have a seal, that's considered to be an adornment, a tachshit, and is mutter. So there's your difference. The difference between one and the other is regarding Shabbos. A tabas that has a chosam is a masoi. It does not have a chosam, it's okay, it's a tachshit. Elelini Shabbos. The ilini tumah. However, with regarding to tumah, Dovada Achasi, all rings are alike, they're all mekabel tumah. There's no distinction. Dovada Achasi. Says the Gemara, is that so? Linin tumah. Dovada Achasi, is it true that with regard to Kabbalah's tumah, all rings are equal and they're all mekabel tumah? Vatnan, we learned in the Mishnah, Tabas Adam Tmeya, this is the Mishnah we learned earlier. A ring, a personal ring, a ring that belongs to an Adam is tummy. Tabas Behema V'Kalim. Otherwise, a tabas of a behema, of kalim, v'shakal tabois, a toiros. So you see, there are differences between various types of tabois, even with regard to tumah. So how can you make that blanket statement all across the board? Tabois, amakabel tumah. We see that's not so. Says the Marki Kamari, you nami, the Adam Kamarli. When Rav responded that all tabois amakabel tumah is speaking about tabois, rings that belong to a person that are serving an Adam. And there's no difference in that case between the various tabois, the omakabatum. Is that so? With the Adam, Achasi, all rings that belong to a person are tummy. Vatani, we learned tabas she'iskina lacher b'masnav, a buckle which was there for the tightening of the belt. V'liksha b'bink seifa, to keep his sleeves up. Torah. It's not directly serving the purpose, only serving indirectly. It's not considered to be a shimush la'adam, and it's not makabel tumah. Rashi explains that we're speaking of the buckle that's not actually currently attached to the belt, and therefore it's not considered to be part of the belt, and this is considered to be tar. When is tabas tummy? Only if it's meant to be placed on a finger. A finger ring is tummy. So you see, even with regard to a tabas serving an adam, we have distinctions. If it is a ring belonging on a finger, it's matame. It becomes tummy. Otherwise, it's not. Says the Markika Amar Iunami, the Etzber Karmale. Rav Eliezer was also referring to a finger ring. And in that case, there's no difference between the various types of rings. They're all makabatum. Says the Gemara, is that so? All rings placed on a finger are considered to be makabatum. We learned in the Mishnah. It depends what material it consists of. Tabash shamat teches. If the tabas, the ring is made of metal, the seal that is embedded in this ring is made from almoy coral, considered to be eights. In that case, tmeya, this tabas is mekabel tumah, because although the tabas shamatechas, the metal ring, is not considered to be a clay kibble, something that has a receptacle, because although the almoy is placed in there, Tosfos explains that this base kibble is not considered to be a kibble because it is asi lamali, is meant to be filled up. So this matechas here is considered to be pshute kli matches, like a flat matechas without a clay kibble. It's not considered to be a receptacle. Nevertheless, a kli matches is tummy even without a clay kibble. So if the main element, the main ingredient of this tabas is metal, although it has some eights there, we give it a din of kli matechas and it's mekabotum. But in the reverse, he shall almig. If the ring is made of this coral, which is considered to be a kli eights, the choisma shel matechas, but the chaysama, its seal is matechas, then we look at the main element, which is the eights, and since it is not a klei kibble, it is tahira, it's not makabatum. So you see clearly that even within the context of a finger ring, we have differences between different types of tabois. Says the Gemara, Kiko hamarle iunami kula shamatechas karmale. Indeed, when Rav Eliezer responded that all these rings are makabatum, he was speaking about rings made of metal, and indeed there's no distinction between one and the other. Another question this Talmud asked Rav Eliezer. Shamati, I heard shecholkin, that they differentiate between different types of pins, and I can't really figure out in what context this distinction is applied. Rav Eliezer responded again in similar fashion. Perhaps what you heard only pertains to Shabbos, that it depends what type of needle. If it is a sewing needle, one cannot walk out with it. Even if it's pinned to his clothing, it's a masay. But if it's a pin, it doesn't have a eye, a hole, and is meant for tachshit, for adornment, that is mutter. So there is a difference between one and the other. The ini linian tuma, but with regards to kabbalas tuma, dav da achazi, all needles and pins, all makabal tuma, there's no differentiation. Says the Gemara, that's so. Ulinian tuma dav da achasi, they're all makabal tuma. But tonight we learned in the Mishnah, machat, a needle shenit al chayra, whose tip was clipped off, or its eye, tahira, it's unfit for use, and it is tahira, is not makabal tuma. So you see clearly that there is a certain type of machat which is not makabal tuma, and even if it was tamei, by clipping off the tip or the eye, it loses its kli status and becomes tahir. So we see there's a chiluk between different types of needles. Kikar marlei b'shleima. Rav Eliezer was referring to a whole needle, not a clipped off one. Ub'shleima dav da achasi. So whole needles are all in the same category. All makabal tuma, is that so? Vatnam, haven't we learned? Machat shel chaluda. So a sewing needle which got rusty, if it gets in the way of the sewing, then it is tar. But if it doesn't get away, interfere, then it's still tummy. Provided it's still the shape of the pin is still discernible. So you see clearly there's some sort of macha that is not makabal tuma. Says Zumar Kiko Hamarle, Bishifa Karmale. Rav Eliezer was referring to a smoothed out pin, not full of rust. Ubeshifa David Achasi, is that so that all smoothed out needles are considered to be makabal tuma? Vatani, but haven't we learned? Machat bein and nekuva, mutal tatlo b'Shabbos. So a needle, whether it was pierced or not, is considered to be a non-muksa item, as Rashi explains. since theoretically one can use it to pull out a splinter, so it still has a function, has a use, and therefore it's not muktzah on Shabbos. However, the stipulation, the condition that the needle needs to be pierced, that is only said with regard to Kabbalas Tumah, that only a pierced needle is Makabal Tumah. So we see clearly that there's a difference between what type of needle. If it is pierced, it is suitable for sewing and is Makabal Tumah. Otherwise, it's not. Second, let's say that all needles are alike and the same. Says the Gemara, Ha Tirguma Abaye. Abaye interpreted this brayso. I'll leave the Rav according to Rav Shita, mentioned later in the Masechta, in a different context. So he explained, interpret this brayso referring to a specific case. Begalmi was speaking about unfinished needles which are waiting to be pierced. In this case, since the work wasn't completed, it was not nigmar malachta because he intends on piercing them. Therefore, they're not makabel tumah. However, a pin which is not intended to be pierced, it's meant for adornment, a tachshit, certainly could be makabel tumah. So it makes sense. Rabbi Eliezer said that all pins, whether or not they have a hole, a makabel tumah, meaning all complete pins, all smooth pins, and the pins that are not considered to be loy nigmar malachtoi, for instance, a sewing needle with a hole, or a pin for a tachshit, which doesn't expect a hole to be made to it, is considered to be nigmar malachtoi. However, with regard to Shabbos, we find a distinction that a sewing needle with a hole is considered to be a maso if worn on Shabbos. A pin worn for adornment is not. So, in conclusion, regarding a tabas, a ring worn on a person's finger made of metal, so if it has a choisem, a seal, on Shabbos, it's considered to be a masay. And it is makabel tumah. If it has no seal, on Shabbos one can wear it. And again, it is makabel tumah. Regarding a machat shlema, a full needle, without any rust, so if it is pierced, on Shabbos one cannot wear it. It is makabel tumah. And if it is not pierced, it is a pin for adornment, a tachshit. On Shabbos it can be worn, and certainly is makabel tumah in this current state. Okay, time for a brief chazorah of today's daf. We began discussing the ribbon, the ritzur shebein karni parah, placed on the cow. We have machlekes Rav Shmuel. According to Rav, if it is placed for noi, for adornment, it is considered to be a masay. If it's coming for shmir yaser, to add an added measure of security, it is also considered to be a masay. Shmuel maintains no. Shmir yaser is okay. Upgrading the level of security is fine and perfect. Is not considered to be a masay. We proceeded with the halacha of the share of the collar wrapped around the neck of the animal for the purpose of noi. According to Rav Huna, it's considered to be a masay. According to Shmuel, it's okay. Similarly, regarding the afsar, this rope also wrapped around the neck of the animal for the purpose of adornment, according to Rebbe, that too is okay. The Gemara proceeded regarding the share, the chain around the neck of the animal. It requires tefillah, and it can be immersed while it's in place. How is it makabel tumah, says the Gemara? It's serving an animal. The Gemara gives us two terutzim. Number one, it was initially serving an adam, and then it became tamei. Or, even in its current state, it's considered to be meshamash l'adam because the owner uses it to guide his animal. Why isn't it a chatzitza while it's in place? We have two terutzim. Either he hammered it out and broadened the rings to allow the water to go through, or initially it was fashioned in that manner which allows the water to come through easily. We concluded with the halacha of tabas, the halacha of machat, that we have distinctions regarding Shabbos, but all those distinctions don't apply regarding Kabbalas Tumah.